Welcome to the Dance Studio Empire podcast, a mix of business strategies, simple tips for studio growth and success, with a touch of inspiration, motivation, plus raw and honest conversations to ensure you are building your studio empire. I'm your host, Jen Dalton, studio owner for 30 years, dance business coach, and author of the book Teaching Dance Beyond the Steps. My business philosophy is creativity is our superpower, and I believe we all have the means and ability to infiltrate this into our studio. Just sometimes we can get too busy, distracted, or overwhelmed to see that. And so this is exactly what I am here to help you do. Okay then, let's do this. Hit that subscribe button, sit back and relax. Now let's get ready to build your dance studio empire. Welcome back to the Dance Studio Empire podcast. I am your host, Jen Dalton, and I am super grateful that you are here, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Now, this particular episode is based around the 3 most asked questions about discipline in the classroom. And over the years, I've spoken to many teachers and studio owners about this because we all at one time or another get stuck with what to do. And so I thought I would share it all with you. Now, for those who have been around for a while, I am sure you will agree that behaviors have certainly changed in class. And there will be other things that you notice, like attention spans seem to have declined. Now, whether this is because of the use of devices that a lot of children are using now, they're used to getting things straight away. There isn't sort of that longevity of waiting for things. And I feel like I see that in the classroom now. And the other main thing that I've noticed is the memory retention, usually for choreography. It just isn't what it used to be. And again, I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because people don't have to practice memorizing things anymore. You know, we save all our passwords on our phone and all the memories are in our contacts. So we don't practice that memory retention anymore. So I'm seeing it in the classroom. I'm sure you're seeing it in the classroom as well. However, in saying that, we, the teachers, the studio owners, we need to adjust how we're managing behaviors in the classroom because it's not going to change. It is what it is. So how is it that we can adjust the way we are managing, we are dealing, we're setting expectations in the classroom so that it is a lot more smooth sailing for you and for the other class members? All right, so let's move on to the first question that I get asked often, and that is, how are we able to effectively discipline our students without crossing the line, being too harsh, or not direct enough? All right, now this really does fall back on the teacher. So the teacher needs to take responsibility for maintaining the positive behavior in your classroom. Now, in many cases, behavioral problems are often a response to boredom or a lack of interest in what's being taught. Another reason could be that you haven't clearly explained your expectations, the rules that you expect in the classroom, or your boundaries. So it's really important to be clear with your students at the beginning of the lesson what you expect for them and how you want them to achieve that. So as an example of this, you could say, today we're going to learn more of our dance. I expect you to listen without talking to your friends while I teach you the choreography. You can practice in groups and individually when I tell you that it's time. And I'd also like you to write out the choreography in your dance journal because I expect you to come back next week and know what we did, applying all of those corrections that I gave you during the class. Does that sound okay to you? And so I've laid out what I expect. Behaviors, I've said that I will prompt them into when it's time to do things. But then at the end, I just asked a simple question. Does that sound okay to you? And at that point, you need to make eye contact with all of your students in the class and get them to acknowledge and say yes, because then there's an unspoken contract that they've made. Now, I know this is not going to be 100% with every single student, of course. However, after that verbal contract, you now have a starting point for a firm discussion if students start talking or if they don't follow your instructions. You can then remind them of the conversation that you had at the beginning of the class and that they agreed to. And so it really is just putting a little bit more responsibility back on them to make sure that they follow through and do as they have been asked. All right, that is question one. Now, the second question that I get asked is, how can I keep my students engaged during the lesson? Okay, a high energy class is going to keep your students constantly moving. And when they're moving, it just leaves less room or opportunity for misbehavior. Now, this can sometimes be a bit tricky when it comes to a ballet class. And so maybe if you've got a class that is particularly disruptive or are struggling to keep their attention, maybe try something different, like different music, or start the class in a different way that you usually would. Sometimes just that change is enough to refocus them. Now, a lot of time misbehavior occurs because your attention is pulled away from the class. So if you start searching for music, maybe you go and look for a pen to mark the roll, or if you're talking to a student one-on-one, sometimes that's enough just to allow a couple in the class to start talking and get a little bit distracted. It's always very hard to pull them back after that. So what's the solution? Just don't give them the time to act up in the first place. One of my pet peeves is, and all my teachers know this, is when I see teachers trying to choreograph for that actual class during class time. And so all of a sudden they're pulled away from the class. They're trying to think of choreography. Maybe they're standing at the stereo, trying to listen to the music and make up some steps. It is a surefire way to lose the focus of your class. And that's when they'll start mucking up and they'll start being distracting. So simple, make sure that you're planned for class, make sure you know where your pen is, have everything set up before you go so that the focus is on you running this class, and just keep it as exciting and high energy as possible, obviously within limits, especially if you're doing a ballet class, but I'm sure there are ways that you can think of to keep it exciting. Now, another tip when it comes to students who tend to get distracted or talk a lot is make sure that they're not positioned at the back of the room. So if you can move them closer to the front, that way it's easier for you to have eye contact with them and engage constantly with them. Because sometimes it's their attention span is so short, they actually lose concentration. But if you're checking in with them all the time, it'll just keep reminding them that they need to stay focused. Separating those talkative students. So, there's always the one who stands next to the one who's chatty, and then there's the one who doesn't stay focused. And for whatever reason, they're almost magnetized next to each other. So just keep them separate. Move them to each side of the room, change their lines, whatever it is. They can catch up during drink breaks or in between classes, but definitely in the classroom. Keeping them apart is going to be a lot better for both of them, and of course for you as well. Now, when I know there's a bit of contentious opinion about this, but be prepared to go overboard with the compliments when these students who are usually distracted or mucking up or misbehaving, when they're doing things that are good, when they're listening, when they're doing positive behaviors, if you can compliment them, that will just allow for them to respond a lot better. They will be excited that they're making you happy. Generally this is what they want. They're not trying to be mean to be distracting and to hurt your feelings. Generally it's just a lack of attention. So when they are getting positive reinforcement back from you, positive comments and feedback, it's going to result in better behavior from them on the most part, but it's absolutely worth giving it a try. I also just would like for you to be aware that just be sure that those well-behaved students aren't being disciplined or being disadvantaged for the actions of others. I know sometimes we can look at a group as a whole and we can make generalized comments about, when there's talking going on or there's not listening or people not remembering the choreography. Just remember there are always going to be people in your class that do remember the choreography, that are always listening and that are well behaved. So it's important to make sure that they're not disadvantaged in those situations. All right, moving on to number 3. So this question, what do I do when I've tried all the tactics and strategies that I know and a student is still misbehaving and distracting the class? All right, persistent misbehavior must be addressed. It's that simple. You simply can't run a class, first of all, to keep moving them forward, but it's not fair to the other students. So if a student's behavior is continually disrupting a class, for me, it's time to speak to the parent. Now, if you're a teacher listening to this, your first protocol after you've tried all your tricks would be to approach your studio owner or your studio manager and maybe ask what you would like them, ask them what they would like you to do. But for those studio owners at this point, you've pulled all your tricks out and it's still not working. It's then when I would speak to the parent. Now, sometimes just speaking to the parent is going to be enough to get the child in order. Maybe the parent will have a word to them and that may be fixed. I've also, in some circumstances, have I asked the parent to actually come into the class and witness or control the behavior themselves. Because sometimes a parent doesn't believe what you are saying for whatever reason. Maybe the parent's expectations of behavior is different. Maybe they haven't witnessed it before. But you have your rules and your expectations in the classroom. And if a child is not adhering to that after it being clearly explained, then maybe it's time to get the parent involved. Now, most time that's going to work, but in the extreme and rare cases that it hasn't, I've actually suggested that the student take a break from dance for a while and maybe try something like football or gymnastics instead. Sometimes the child doesn't want to be in the class and the parent's making them. And if all else fails, you've tried everything, you've spoken to the parent, you can't break them, then I think it is time to take a break from dance. For some of you who are relying on enrollments for financial reasons, this can be really hard, but I want you to try and take a step back and think about the cost of having this student in your class could actually be costing you money because you may lose other students, or it might not be appealing if you had someone come in, say, for a trial lesson and this child was misbehaving. That child might not enroll, or if a parent actually saw this behavior, they might actually not enroll. So it can sometimes cost you more by asking someone to leave because it's then going to open the door for people who are more suited in your classroom. So that is just something to think about. Now, on a final note, when you do speak up about concerning behavior, I feel like it's really important that you make sure that your students understand that it's about their behavior that you're upset about, not them. So try and limit comments that make your students feel like failures. Because if you react to the situation in a respectful way, then most students will respond in a respectful way back. Sometimes I feel, and I know it can be frustrating and very hard for teachers in the classroom and studio owners as well, when that constant, tracking their behavior and asking them to behave and having them sit down. I know how hard that can be, but if you just keep focusing on the behavior as opposed to the child, sometimes can help with some clearer strategies and ideas to making that better. So try and remove all of your feelings away from it and just look at the behavior as such. All right, so they are just 3 of the main questions that get asked by teachers and studio owners. I hope that somewhere in there has given you an idea of something to try. As I said at the beginning, the classroom experience has changed, and not only the students, also the parents. The parents expectations have changed, the way they manage their own children have changed, the parents' resilience has changed. And so this does affect us as studio owners and as teachers. But what can we do? We can whinge and moan about it. We can jump on social media and complain, or we can actually look at ways to fix it and make it better and work in a cohesive fashion to make it an enjoyable experience, as well as making sure that we're achieving the goals that we need to achieve, the goals and the expectations that we've promised to all of our families who are enrolled. It just sometimes needs us to look within ourselves and adjust some ways that we are currently doing things. So that is our challenge for the weeks moving forward. All right, everyone, I hope you have enjoyed this episode, a nice quick one today. And yeah, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear from you. We have our Facebook group, Dance Studio Empire, as well as Instagram, which is also at Dance Studio Empire. Please let me know if you have any comments. You can DM me or definitely send me an email. That will be wonderful. All right, everyone, have a really great week, and I will catch you next Thursday. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dance Studio Empire. If you enjoyed it, please share it on your stories on Instagram and be sure to tag me at Dance Teacher Central so I can say thank you. And if you really want to support me and the show, I'd absolutely love for you to leave a rating or review. For all the latest from me, you can follow me at Dance Teacher Central on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to tune in next week for more strategies and tips to ensure you are building your dance studio empire.